just did an audio book of my first These Are the Voyages book, which has a cast of 80 people in it, and Vic is the primary reader, but he recorded and produced the whole thing, and it's 28 hours long. And so this guy is always working, and he's always going some places, and yet he never misses a beat. He never misses an appointment. So yeah, it's probably technological. It's probably his system went down. Maybe there's a power failure in Texas, and his Skype isn't working, and his phone isn't working. Yeah, I'm concerned to hear about that. We'll hopefully hear from him before the end of the show, and I'll be looking for him afterwards if we don't.
Okay. Well, we're going to go for a break, so I'm going to put you on hold for about 2.5 minutes. We'll be back. Then we can start talking about what Vic did to create a series on his own and how he got funding for it. And, I think we got him on. Hang on. Let's see here. Are you there, Vic?
Hello, Gary. I am.
Yay!
I am so very sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I had a bit of an emergency and family emergency, and I'm so sorry that I'm so late getting to you.
Well, hopefully you got the emergency taken care of, because I did, and I so appreciate you saying that, and I'm so sorry that I was delayed in getting to you. Okay. Now, normally, because I'm on the internet and we're on radio stations, I'm not going to take a break. So I'm going to continue on for the radio stations out there, people listening. You might miss a minute or two, but we're going to continue on going. Vic, why don't you tell everybody about you?
Sure. Well, I've been acting and writing and producing music since I was very young. About 20 years ago, I stumbled into voice acting, and I've since in the 20 years since I've done about 300 different animated series and video games, a lot of different things. I've written and produced a great deal of music professionally, and then about 6 years ago, I decided I wanted to pay tribute to my childhood inspiration, and that was the original series of Star Trek that I just loved and absorbed when I was a little boy, 9, 10, 11, 12, through probably about 15 or 16. And it really inspired me in many ways to do things that I do now at a professional level. So about 6 years ago, I brought a bunch of people together, friends of mine who were actors and technicians and artisans, who were really qualified in their fields, but they were also big Star Trek fans when they were young. And we all came together and we made our first episode of Star Trek-Continues. And I got to fulfill my childhood dream of playing Captain Kirk. And we made our first episode and we put it out for people to enjoy, not knowing how it would be received, but it has been received just so amazingly well, and we went on to make 11 full-length episodes. We now have over 10 million viewers. We've won dozens of awards, and it looks and sounds and feels exactly like the original series of Star Trek. It picks up where the original series was canceled, and it finishes with the ending of the 5-year mission, the returning of the Enterprise to Earth, and we have crafted a beautiful story to bring everyone right up to where they were when Star Trek the Motion Picture came out in the late 70s. It's been my childhood passion project to do it, and I'm very, very proud of what we've accomplished. We rebuilt the entire soundstage, and everything about our production made people feel like they were watching episodes that were locked in a vault somewhere for 50 years. So I still am a voice actor, and I still write and produce music professionally, and then Star Trek Continues is my childhood passion project, my love letter to Star Trek, as I like to tell people. Well, and then my overlap with Marc Cruhman, the author of These Are the Voyages, was that he reached out to me completely unsolicited, told me that he had seen our third episode and thought it was amazing and would like to talk to me. And we met for lunch one day and became friends. And then I started kind of having Marc kind of be a script consultant. We would write a script and send it to him for his thoughts and feedback as a professional scriptwriter. And then I wrote a story for episode 5 of Star Trek Continues, and Marc turned it into a screenplay. And then about a year ago, his publishing company contacted me and said, we would like to do an audiobook version of These Are the Voyages, and we can't think of anybody better to do it than you, because not only are you a voice actor, but you're also a huge Star Trek fan and well-known in that field because of Star Trek Continues. And so I spent most of 2018 recording the audiobook for the first season of These Are the Voyages. And I'm sure Marc probably told you, I decided that it would be really fun, much more fun to listen to if I could get a lot of other people to voice the other characters in the book, like Gene Roddenberry or Bob Justman or Jerry Finnerman or Majel Barrett or the network executives or Lucille Ball and or Leonard Nimoy. And so I ended up bringing in 80 some different people, some of them the original contributors to the original series of Star Trek. Dorothy Fontana.
Oh, wow. DC
Fontana actually came to my studio and recorded her own excerpts from the book. Joe D'Agosta, the casting director, Clint Howard, Bobby Clark, Sean Kinney, people that were actually there. Adam Nimoy recorded his father's excerpts. Chris Doohan recorded his father's excerpts. And then we had a lot of our Star Trek Continues casting crew fill in the spaces with their relative counterparts. Jerry Finnerman, for instance, was the director of photography for Star Trek, the original series, and I had Matt Busey, our director of photography for Star Trek Continues, be the voice of Jerry Finnerman. So it was it made the whole project so much more fun to listen to, and you felt like the listener will actually feel like they are sitting in a room with Gene Roddenberry, and Gene Roddenberry is telling them in his own words. They'll feel like they're listening to these people, give their firsthand account of the making of the original series and the struggles that came along with making it.
Now, I got to ask you a question, Vic.
Sure.
What made you all of a sudden decide you wanted to make a series? You made the first one and then you made the second. I mean, what made you want to do that? I know you already said you're a huge fan, but actually motivated you to actually start building the set and get the funding?
I'll be honest with you. Gary. I credit the original Star Trek with a great deal of what I do professionally now. I literally, a lot of the things that I do at a professional skill level now, I started or tried for the first time because of Star Trek. When you're little, before you've ever really learned to do anything, when you're just a young kid, you don't really know what your talents are. You don't know what your skills may be. You don't know what you may be good at or what you may have a natural affinity for, and I was no different than any other kid. But when I watched the original Star Trek, suddenly I wanted to build a communicator. I wanted to make a phaser. I wanted to make a uniform. And I got my mom to teach me to use the sewing machine so that I could make uniforms. And I would go to the hobby store or the hardware store, and I would walk up and down the aisles and look for things that looked like something I could adapt to be a communicator or a tricorder. I would build cardboard sets in the woods behind our apartment building, and then I would even round the kids in the neighborhood up and make them wear the uniforms that I had made And we would make little Star Trek episodes. And, of course, I played Captain Kirk, and I would hang models of the Enterprise in front of a black poster board and then run the camera past the ship to make it look like the ship was flying by the camera.
The little model ship that he built. And Gary, you know, the funny thing is that that's what he's still doing.
Exactly.
He's just playing.
So Gary, all of these things that I was doing at 9 and 10 and that I tried for the first time and realized that I had kind of a natural gift in a lot of these areas. I went to school and started auditioning for school plays because I loved Bill Shatner and Leonard Nimoy and Kirk and Spock and the stories they told and the way they moved me emotionally with their stories. And I wanted to do that too. So fast forward 4 decades, and I'm thinking, you know, there have been a lot of Star Trek fan productions out there. There have been a large number of fan productions, and of all varying degrees of quality, if you know what I mean. But I thought, you know, I know how to make a film. I majored in film in college. I know how to act. I know how to write. I know how to direct. I know how to light, camera, editing, sound design, music, prop building. I've done all of these things my whole life. And what better way to use them than to pay tribute to the thing that inspired them in the first place 40-some years ago. And that's why I did it.
Now, I got to ask you a question. When you were playing Captain Kirk, did you feel like you were Captain Kirk? I mean, you fit the part so well. I mean, seriously, I got today, I'll be honest with you, up to today, I didn't even know your show existed. I think on the news about 2 years ago, they did a thing about you. And I remember watching that. But I never watched any of the episodes because I'll be honest with you, I'm so busy. This is like a one-man operation, what I do on my show. And it's like a 13-hour a day just doing my show. And so I don't get to watch TV much. I don't get to watch what's out there. I watched a couple episodes today. And I tell you, I was in total shock. It made me feel like the original. I mean, you had his gestures, you have his looks pretty much, and it's just like I'm watching the original thing. And I'll be honest with you, it's actually even better.
Well, there's not much of a higher praise you could give us. But let me just, in answer to your question, let me say this. 100 people, if not 1,000, have asked me, how long did you study William Shatner to get him down? And I always tell them the same thing. I never studied him. I just loved him. When I was a little boy, I didn't study him. It never occurred to me that I would ever walk on to a perfect recreation of the Enterprise in a perfect uniform and play that character. I just loved him so much. I loved his character. My parents had divorced when I was 9, right at the same time that I had discovered Star Trek, and my dad was gone, and Captain Kirk very much became kind of a role model and a father figure to me. And so I just loved him so much that when it came time to play him, I wasn't trying to mock him or satire or do any kind of parody. In fact, I told my production team, if you ever see me doing anything that even remotely looks like parody, like if you ever think I'm overdoing the Shatner thing, let me know immediately, because the last thing I would ever want to do is for anyone to think that I'm mocking or satirizing the original Captain Kirk. And so it was much more just paying as much tribute and homage and reverence and respect, not only to Kirk, but to the whole concept of Star Trek. You know, I hate to wax philosophical here, Gary, but Star Trek is not about beaming down. Star Trek was never about fighting the Klingons. Star Trek was not about flipping open communicators and firing phasers. Star Trek was about the human condition. Star Trek resonated with people, and it still